if you're listening and you have got a dream in your heart that keeps, maybe it comes up when you're in the shower, maybe it comes up when you put your head on the pillow at night, maybe you think that the dream is dead. That keeps coming to you for a reason. I would just encourage you, don't get wrapped around as we get older. Sometimes we talk ourselves out of like, that's not going to make any sense. That sounds crazy. My friends, my family are going to think I'm nuts to go after this. But there's something inside you there's that whisper telling you, this is a dream for a reason. Don't get stuck in the how.
Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. It is such a gift to have Colonel Martha McSally here with us today. Martha is a pioneering combat-proven leader, inspiring speaker, and celebrated author. She is a compelling example of overcoming adversity and fear to achieve extraordinary feats. Losing her dad at the age of 12 and surviving sexual abuse and assault, she persevered to become the first woman in U.S. history to fly an Air Force fighter jet in combat and command a fighter squadron in combat. Martha deployed 6 times to the Middle East and Afghanistan, flying 325 combat hours in the A-10 attack plane, earning the Bronze Star and 6 air medals. Her book, Dare to Fly, inspires readers to follow their heart and live the life that they came here to live, fully aligned with their divine essence. And that is what we're here to focus on today. And Martha, I've had a chance to get to know you a little bit over these last few months, and you are the real deal, and you are a phenomenal speaker. I got to hear your keynote at the Genius Network annual event, and just so thrilled for our audience to get to learn from you and just get some Martha energy in their lives, because you are a beautiful human. So
Thank you, Vered. Well, I'm honored to be in this conversation with you and with everyone who is listening. This is not by mistake, and I look forward to our time together today.
So first, I want to touch on the title of your book, Dare to Fly. What does those words mean to you, and what was the driving force to write that?
Well, it speaks towards my whole life in many ways, where they told me that I couldn't be a fighter pilot because I was a girl. But let me go back. They basically like dared me to fly, and I was like, all right, well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I just willed it into existence. It took many, many years, but I knew what my destiny was, and I ensured that I made decisions along the way in order to fulfill that destiny. But let's go back a little bit further. As a youngest of 5 kids, grew up in a middle-class family. My dad really came from humble circumstances, but through hard work and people believing in him and investing in him, and him then serving in the military, he just was, driven to make a better life for us kids. He, was able to get an education and, build a family where he provided for us. And I'm like so grateful for that. But he passed away very suddenly when I was 12, and my world was just turned upside down. He was like 49 years old, which I thought was old at the time. Now I realize how young that is. And I went from, between 6th and 7th grade, just tough time anyway. All of a sudden my dad's gone, and then my mom was just, hit with this tragedy as a widow with 5 kids, and God bless her, she went back to school and back to work. And I just started this trajectory of trying to make my dead father proud, but because before he passed away, in between heart attacks, he told me to make him proud. So it's very driven, which is a impossible, you're almost chasing a horizon, right? Every time trying to achieve something. But I was also dealing with grief as a kid, and suffering and struggling. But that really was the inflection point of the trajectory of my life, heading in a place of knowing life was short and wanting to do something meaningful to make him proud, but still working through my stuff and the trauma. And I was, trusting a coach of mine as a father figure who then violated that. So now I'm getting just like another traumatic experience. And I just knew in my spirit I was meant for more, and these experiences were not to define me. I wouldn't have said that at the time, but I went to the Air Force Academy, and I just was like, I'm gonna take the flight path of my life and do something meaningful. And when I got there, I found out that it was against the law for women to be fighter pilots, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I was motion sick when I was a kid. I had no desire to be a pilot. But when I found out they told me I couldn't because I was a girl, it just pissed me off. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I had this little rebellious spirit inside me too, which if anybody's listening who has teenagers, God bless you. I turned out okay, but I was a handful in those teenage years because I was dealing with the turmoil inside me, right? And I was just looking for someone to take it away and I was acting out. But I'm, entrepreneurial change agent. That's my personality. And so I just took this rebelliousness and I was like, no, I'm going to be a fighter pilot. And I didn't say, I hope I'll be a fighter pilot. I might be a fighter pilot. I was like, I am a fighter pilot. And it took about 10 years, but I was in the right place at the right time with the right qualifications and the right grit when they finally changed the law, changed the policy, and opened up fighters to women. And I got to bust through that, on behalf of others. So super, super grateful. So don't dare me, I dare you not to fly, right? And so I learned a lot along the way about overcoming my own fear and building courage to do what seems to be the impossible and to become my future self and future self vision. And I learned a lot of tools, but one of the most important is courage from my view. And courage is not the absence of fear, it's doing things afraid in the midst of the fear, and then you realize the fear doesn't have power over you. As Dan Sullivan says, courage is doing what you need to do with wet pants, right? So I've got more experience than I want to in this. And it's a part of what I share in my book and in my speeches and coaching.
Absolutely. And it is so inspiring to consider that there was something that wasn't even possible in the sense of like the law. And
Yeah.
then somehow, right, that became possible. And
Yeah.
you made a decision, almost like a commitment.
Yes.
This is me. This is what I'm going to do. Not if possibly, this is it.
Yes.
And it seems like just doors opened up and possibilities opened up. I imagine you also worked very, very hard uh,
Yes.
to get to that place and stay in that place and to earn respect. And so what do you want our listeners to really get from that story for themselves?
Well, we often, when we think of our bigger future, when we feel inspired in our lives, in our business, in anything about maybe a dream that we had when we were younger and we came up with all the reasons why it couldn't happen, but it's still there and it's turning. And maybe we're reflecting on, hey, we're not getting any younger. Is that dream still possible to come true? We often decide whether it's possible or not first. And then we work backwards from there. It's something neurologically our brain does anyway, because the brain wants to keep us safe. I now understand this more than I did at the time. But I have shown in my life that by declaring what you are in the present terms, right? I am a fighter pilot. Declaring it, even though I had no idea how it was going to happen, you have to put the how to the side. And you just have to have the vision of your future self and you have to embody it. Like I was envisioning myself in the cockpit, taking off in the fighter jets. And I was determined it was going to happen. And then I had to work hard. You don't just sit around and hope it all is going to happen. I had to do my part to not have a chip on my shoulder, right? To keep blooming where I was planted. And when opportunities came up and I had decisions to make, I would always make decisions to keep the door open. So I had a decision out of the Air Force Academy. I went to graduate school for 2 years. I accepted a full scholarship to Harvard. I was trying to buy myself time. I mean, I laugh about it now. It was a full scholarship to Harvard, but I was all like focused on my goal, buying myself time so that I could eventually be a fighter pilot. And then out of pilot training, the law changed, but the policy didn't change. But I thought I was going to be able to pick a fighter, and they said no. And it was like, this is now 7+ years into this, and I'm an endurance athlete for a reason, right? Persevering and not letting the dream die, even when you feel moments of doubt. Even I had them through this whole thing. But then I made a decision to become an instructor pilot because I knew that that would keep the door open. And if I chose a different cockpit, like flying cargo planes, it would close the door. So I had to do my part to take inspired action to keep that door open, to keep that dream alive. I had nothing to do with the policy changing or the law changing, but I was guaranteeing, like, I was just determined that's what I was going to do. So if you're listening and you have got a dream in your heart that keeps, maybe it comes up when you're in the shower, maybe it comes up when you put your head on the pillow at night, maybe you think that the dream is dead. that keeps coming to you for a reason. I would just encourage you, don't get wrapped around as we get older. Sometimes we talk ourselves out of like, that's not going to make any sense. That sounds crazy. My friends, my family are going to think I'm nuts to go after this. But there's something inside you there's that whisper telling you, this is a dream for a reason. Don't get stuck in the how. Just paint the picture of the vision. And as you hold that vision, you have to be intentional about it. You're holding that vision. You're determined that that vision is going to come true. If you're taking off in an airplane, from Arizona, I've got to decide, am I going to New York or am I going to California? Now, I could adjust course once I'm airborne, but you can't do that if you're taxiing around on the ground. So you've got to take off, taking inspired action towards that impossible dream. And it's often a who, not a how, but you just never know. Doors can open for you once you step into that. You take some action, get some momentum, and you may hold it there for a long time, but that doesn't mean that it's dead. It's just germinating, and the conditions are not quite right for it to happen. But you've got to do your part, to take that inspired action. You have to make it all happen. I used to do that a lot in my life, like make it all happen, just kind of in a bulldozing way, grinding way. But if you were to allow it to happen, keep that dream, and the next inspired action that you feel compelled to take it. And then you'll keep getting sort of updates in your flight path along the way, and the vision can come true. And I hope you're inspired by my story for your own story to not let your dreams die.
That's right. That's right. And I'm so grateful that you're teaching it to us through your experience, because, a lot of people have this feeling of that's not possible, right? Whatever it is that they want. Or it's not possible for me. It might be great for Martha because she's an endurance athlete and because she's, the strong mindset lady, but it's not true for me. And so I want to kind of share just a quick quote that I actually have on my, home screen on my phone. That is really, really powerful, and it touches on what you're talking about. And then I want to dive in a little bit deeper, if it's all right.
Yeah.
This is a quote by Muhammad Ali. And he said, "Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing."
I love that. That's an awesome quote. It's so true. I mean, think about it. Everything in our lives, everything to include the chair I'm sitting on or this technology we're using, like it was first created by somebody dreaming about it, thinking about it. Like it was created first in somebody's mind, and then there was inspired action taken in order to bring it into 3D form. So we often get stuck in well, it's not here in 3D form, so I guess it can't be. But like this is the experience we were intended to have on this planet, right? Is that we're constantly creating, no matter what role you're in, no matter what your job or your title is, you are creating things around you. You are creating opportunities for the people who work with you or in your family and those of you who love and your neighbors. Like we're constantly creating. So of course it seems impossible because it hasn't happened yet, but literally everything that happens first by creating it in a thought and then turning it into the action or turning it into the result.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like this concept of fear and faith, right? Or that belief.
Yeah.
They're both kind of the same in the sense that they're both a belief in something that hasn't happened yet, right? So are you going to choose the fear side, right? And imagine all the possibilities of what might not work and what might happen.
Right.
Or might you choose faith, which is, again, to do what you did. Imagine being in that, right? In your example, that cockpit, imagine doing the thing that you want to do. Yes. So let me ask you a question. What about for those individuals listening that don't know what they want to dare to do? So they just don't have an idea yet of what is purposeful and meaningful to them.
Yeah. I mean, we can all relate to that, whether, different times in our lives, like questioning, am I taking the right path? Or is this what I'm supposed to be doing now? Or maybe you feel just dissatisfied in what you are doing. So, you were meant for more, but, there's also a fear of like, well, this is kind of comfortable. It's predictable, it provides for our needs. but there's this churning inside you like or something else, but you don't know what that is. I would first encourage you to spend some time just by yourself. If tomorrow was your 80th birthday party, or if next week were your funeral, depending on which energy feels better for you, how would you want people to describe you? If you were to answer the question or fill in this sentence, I am, what words would you put after that? And this is really important because what we say after the words I am is our identity. And this is something that, oftentimes when we're introduced, well, we'll answer what our role is, right? Well, I'm a fighter pilot, I'm a colonel, I'm a, entrepreneur, I'm a whatever your title is, or I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I'm a husband or wife, these roles we're in. But those are temporary roles that we're in. They are not the true essence of who you are, uniquely made like a snowflake. Nobody's ever going to be made just like you again. And I think sometimes we spend our lives like on a hamster wheel and we don't connect to the true essence of who we are. And if we can do that, then that can help make decisions going forward. Is this a yes or is this a no? But you have to first connect with who you truly are first. So I would encourage you, just pull out a blank piece of paper and just describe yourself. Use adjectives, nouns, adverbs. It doesn't matter, right? If someone were to capture in 5 words, but do more than 5 when you're first brainstorming, because you just got to like prime the pump and just keep writing. Like, how would they describe you? You can't see, but I have got a list of words back here. It's not in focus of my I am statements. This is so serious. I've got it around my house. So I remind myself, I am courageous. I am integrity. I am generous. I am growing. I am relentless, anti-fragile, funny, adventurous, love, strong, feminine, passionate, and determined. Those are my I ams. And I came up with that list by sitting and reflecting with myself, like, what truly describes my essence? And in addition to that, I reached out to people who know me well, people who love me. And I asked them, what would you pick 5? What 5 words would you use to describe me? And these need to be people who really know you, not people who are always looking at your, your warts and your not best attributes, right? But people who really see the best in you. And some of these words actually came from some of the closest people, like, oh yeah, like generous. Like they're the ones who reminded me, that I was generous. So I would encourage everybody who's listening, it doesn't take that much time, but spend a few minutes, put those words down and then reach out to a few people and ask them. And then like come up with a list. It can be ever changing. You can be tweaking it, but be like, yeah, that really captures me. That captures me. Okay. So then when you have ideas, when you're thinking about maybe I want to change a career, maybe I want to do something different, what would align with that? What does, when you think about a new idea or an opportunity comes your way, does it feel expansive and aligned, or does it feel like contractive and not aligned? Does it feel like you're doing it out of love, or you feel like you're doing it out of fear? We all actually, if we tune in, we all know, and these generally are binary choices. And sometimes we just tune out like, I know this is a scarcity, fear decision, but it's getting me a steady paycheck. But seriously, like if this were the last week of your life, I'm not saying you don't need to provide for your family, and those fears can be real. So I want to have compassion there. But like you're the top regret of the dying is that they didn't live a life fully aligned with who they truly are. So why don't we remind ourselves of that lesson, and let's make sure that we don't have those regrets. So you don't have to figure it all out, but figuring out who you are and connecting with who you are then can help make decisions more obvious to you. Yes, no, expansive, contractive, love, or fear. That's what I would advise.
That is beautiful advice. And I encourage everyone to do this exercise, because really that list is our values, our heart values, those things
Yes.
that are most important to us, not in any particular context, just
Yeah.
the essence of who we are, kind of what we were born with, these beautiful jewels that we're born with. And when we can honor these values, so let's say courageous in that example, even if let's say we're on a role that is not necessarily what we would call courageous, we can make courageous decisions. We can be courageous in other areas of our life. Just
Yes.
allow that energy to move, to be to be honored, and then that will lead to other things.
Yes. And it doesn't mean, I mean, I've done a lot of things that others would describe as courageous. I have befriended the feeling of fear, just to be clear. Like I am very familiar with that feeling. And from a young age, the feeling that we all get when we're about to do something that's in the unknown, that's scary, that's we may be afraid of failing or succeeding or being rejected or whatever it is. There may be a lot of subconscious fears, but we're right on the edge of what's comfortable. If you can think about it, like here's where our current capabilities are, and we're right on the edge. We all have that same human feeling. And by the way, we've evolved to have it in order to keep us safe, right? It's the amygdala looking around for threats, and a threat is something that's different and new. And it's like, no, 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 no. Saber-tooth tiger is coming. You don't want to do that, right? Contract, hide is what the tendency would be. But if you get familiar with that feeling when you're actually safe, obviously, if you're in danger, then you need to do what you need to do to take care of yourself. But usually this is when we're in a position to, step out of our comfort zone, to grow in our capabilities. We're right on that edge, befriending that fear, being familiar with it. First step is awareness. This is the same feeling. I feel like I'm going to throw up. My heart is beating. My mouth is dry. I feel uncomfortable. Okay. Sitting with that with compassion, where is that coming from? What is that? Is that protecting me, or is it trying to protect me, but actually it's holding me back? And don't just push it down, but actually be curious about it. And then choosing to do things afraid when no, what I'm actually stepping out into is aligned with my divine essence. It's an amazing, expansive opportunity. So it's not that I don't feel afraid still, but you're choosing to step out in the fear. And when you do that, you will build your courage. You will build your confidence and your new capabilities you've never done before. But you have to take that step. And if you're growing in life and you're committed to a life of growth, we're always going to feel that feeling because we're always expanding. I would be more concerned if you don't feel that feeling, because that means that you're basically contracting or you're stuck. But if you feel it, it's never going to stop happening. Like people like me who have flown in combat and done a lot of other crazy stuff that people think like, oh, well, she just doesn't feel fear like me. It's like, no, I have actually normalized befriending my fear and then turning it into jet fuel.
Wow. So would you be willing to take us into the cockpit, so to speak, right?
Mm.
Into a scene, a moment where you felt that fear?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, let me tell you first, here's the A-10. Here's the plane I flew. It's a single seat attack airplane. Its entire job is what we call close air support. So we show up when troops are on the ground, under fire, often in very close proximity with the enemy, and often on the move in really complex circumstances where the fog of war and miscommunication and the risk of us actually hurting the good guys is high because it's just so complicated. And there are no two-seaters. And when I went through training, there were no simulators. So the first time I'll bring you into the cockpit is when I was cleared for takeoff for the first time. Now, I already told you about my 10-year journey of declaring I am a fighter pilot. And now 10 years later, it's coming true. Okay. So my dream's coming true, but I'm at the end of the runway at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base with my instructor pilot in the plane right next to me, and the tower clears me for takeoff. And I'm sitting there alone in my plane, and I've never flown this plane before, and I have to make a decision. Am I going to taxi back and get out because I'm so afraid? Obviously, I felt afraid. I felt like, am I enough? Yeah, I was doubting myself. Do I have what it takes? I mean, other people's, done this before. Can I do this too? I mean, talk about the things going on in your head, at the moment you're cleared for takeoff. And so I had to decide, taxi back in, push up the power, go out on the runway and take off afraid. And so with my heart beating almost as loud as the engines, I made the decision to take off afraid. And then that built my confidence. And for a moment, I remember looking over at my instructor pilot, seeing the A-10 flying next to me. And I was like, hey, man, I'm finally an A-10 pilot. I look like that. And then I was like, oh, crap, I got to learn how to land this thing. Pay attention, McSally, get back to being present. But that became where over time, I was learning how to just basically fly the airplane and then eventually fly it tactically, fly it at night, fly it in the weather, fly at low altitude, learn how to air refuel and like purposely run into another airplane in order to, pass fuel. And then later flying combat and, flying more complex circumstances in combat and then lead others in combat. So it got to where we can all appreciate this. Think about the first time you drove a car. Obviously, it's not the same as flying a fighter jet, but it's the same idea. Or the first day you showed up for a new role that you were in that you never done before, right? You're the new CEO, you're the new, CFO. You're like, oh God, I don't know, do I have what it takes? Like all this stuff going on in your head. You've never led a team like this before. You initially are like pushing through the fear, and then you're building conscious competence, right? Like you're actually having to consciously be like, what should I do next? I've got to build some systems and processes here. I've got to figure out how the team can most effectively operate. And over time, you actually build unconscious competence, right? So it got to where I took off in this plane so many times that taking off was almost like driving to work in the morning. Have you ever driven, to work and then you're like, how did I even get here? Because you're unconsciously competent now. So it's almost running in the background and you're able to also think about other things. So it got to where that very first day I was using every brain cell that I had in order to take off in the plane. But over time, sure, I was present, sure, I was focused, but it wasn't the same level of intensity. I was teaching students how to fly, where me flying my plane was a given. I now had to communicate on the radio for them to stay safe. So it's like anything in life. Like the first time it's really scary, but then as we build our competence, then it becomes more of an unconscious competence, but then it's time to expand again. Then it's time to grow. So, I mean, every mission in combat was different. We would take off with maps of everywhere in Afghanistan on our dashboard, and we would often be given a call sign, a radio frequency, and a grid coordinate and said, hey, these guys are under fire. They need your help. Go help them. And so day or night, good weather or bad, different types of terrain, we would then be talking to somebody on the ground who's under fire, and they would be trying to describe from the ground to us in the air what's happening and where is everybody and what they need from us. And again, sometimes we're using a lot of technology like, lasers and infrared pointers and night vision goggles and all sorts of stuff. And one time, the ground controller pulled out a little pocket mirror and flashed the sun into my eyes and said, "Here I am. Don't hit me." So the whole breadth of the tools that we use in order to hold hold our fear in check, communicate with clarity and urgency in the middle of a crisis where lives are at stake, and then execute with precision while holding your fear in check. It's something that I just had to learn to do in order to be able to deliver firepower and help save American lives.
Wow. And of course, first of all, thank you from my heart for your service.
Absolutely.
On behalf of everyone listening. And what you're describing here is this process of expansion, right? So something is new or different, our body doesn't yet have maybe the circuitry, the program, trust, the faith yet that will be safe. And yes, there are things that we can do in advance of that, like visualization, as you said, and other things to prime our body and our mind for that in advance of that event.
Yeah.
And there may still be, fear or worry or doubt or anxiety or whatever that might be. And it's being conscious of that, as you're saying, being present to it, not denying it or suppressing it, just listening to it, and perhaps, giving it evidence that you'll be okay, right, to those parts of you. And it's really cool that you've done that. And you notice that, again, that comfort zone, if we were to call it that, just expands and expands and expands to the point that even like being in a fighter jet taking off, it's kind of like, you're doing it unconsciously, which is just amazing to me, like to even consider that,
and this isn't, again, these are cool, interesting stories. It's not about whether you're going to fly a fighter jet or not. These lessons are for all of us in life, right? Like if you're going to do something new and different, you're going to feel fear. There are tools you can use, but decisions you have to make in order to then stretch yourself, do things afraid. You consciously build your competence. It then can become where it's more of an unconscious competence as a leader, in whatever aspect we might be talking about. And then the question is, am I comfortable? What do I need to do to expand again?
Yeah, and that's a really cool question, because again, that little voice can come back up and say, maybe it's time to pivot again, not quite satisfied. And sometimes there are
Mhm.
these, what we might call golden handcuffs or that golden cage, which you kind of refer
Yeah.
to where things are comfortable or not, particularly, under threat or danger in any way.
Yeah.
It's just kind of okay, but we're also not truly fulfilled. And that's the tricky place there of, do I dare to fly again?
Yeah.
Or do I keep the status quo? It's safe, it's
Yep.
comfortable, I'm okay. So how do we handle that situation where we don't need to change? There's just a little bit of
Yeah.
a voice or an impulse to do so.
Well, I think checking in with yourself and really sitting with yourself to ask yourself the question, where is this coming from? Is this coming from fear? Is it coming from something deeper inside me that really desires and knows I was meant for more, or there's a bigger impact that I can have? Or are you like chasing things in the 3D world that you think are going to bring you peace that never can? So only you can answer that question, right? I mean, we can be at peace but not fully satisfied because there's always more that we want to grow and do. That's different than, I think, running around chasing different things in order to meet your peace inside you that never can do that. There's just it's just never going to happen. So you're going to exhaust yourself doing that. So getting to like, why do I feel a desire to do something different? That's a really important, question to ask yourself. I'm leading these adventure retreats now, and as people are coming talking to me, often in middle age in life, entrepreneurs and people that are leaders in business, they've succeeded. They set their goals and they met all their goals, but they're just like, my health isn't great, my marriage isn't that great, I'm actually kind of bored at work. Isn't there more here? And they're looking to reconnect with themselves in nature with me for them to get more clarity on what their greater future is. And that is, I think, a process that's important to make sure you're connected as you're making these decisions. But if you're just chasing something, it doesn't matter what the thing is, you're never going to get that satisfaction from it. So always like, why do you feel the need to like mix things up? We all know, we've all got friends who are just like constantly, I'm a quick start, on the Kobe thing, that are constantly like, squirrel, squirrel, what's the next thing? And never actually like being able to follow through and complete the mission first. And so I think the most important question is like, why do I feel the need to like move or shift or change or rock things, rock the boat? And if it's for this expansive growth reason, great. If it's for like chasing satisfaction through things that can never give that to you, then there's some, deeper inner work that maybe that's worth doing in order to get that level of peace.
Yeah, I'm with you. Otherwise, we might repeat the same pattern and not truly
Yes.
find sustainable satisfaction.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a blend. So what I mean by that
Yeah.
is part of us might be really moving toward that. Let's say in the example of the board individual, right? So they're moving toward excitement, adventure, challenge, something new
Yeah.
and exciting. And maybe part of them is moving away from boredom.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we know what is the driving force? Is it truly more fear dominated or
Mm.
more love or kind of excitement
I
dominated?
mean, each of you can only answer that for yourself. And I think that comes from taking the time on your journey to take ownership of the fact that I believe that we are creating the life that we are living. This is my belief, right? And so taking ownership of, hey, I'm having experiences in life that are basically creating or mirroring, things that are going on inside me, or attracting things in my external circumstances that are actually showing me something where I need to grow. And we often think the problem is the external circumstance, and the reality is it's an opportunity for us to look and say, like, why do I keep attracting the same type of relationship with a different name, right? Why do I keep that's not satisfying or is not even valuing me or has some sort of, why do I keep attracting the same sort of circumstances around me in business or the team or frustrations or things that aren't going right? So doing that inner reflection of like, okay, if this is my experience and my view, if I'm and it's often from things we've experienced in our life that maybe we're not even aware of. Gabor Mate, our friend, calls it big T trauma or little T trauma. Something that happened to us where we are maybe, on the frequency of I'm not enough, or a fear of abandonment, or a fear, like whatever that is. And then, if we keep attracting circumstances around us where people are abandoning us, or people are basically coming into our lives saying, you're not enough, they're not the problem, as harmful and as painful as that may sound. And I'm not blaming the victim here. So just bear with me. From my view, for me, the biggest growth spurts in my life would be like, okay, I went through some really awful, challenging things I wouldn't wish on anybody, but they were an opportunity for me to graduate from the lesson that I am enough. Like I am not a victim. I am not someone who deserves to be treated this way. And I'm going to graduate from that so that I actually find myself in different circumstances that are reflecting actually what's going on inside me. And I don't know, that was maybe a deeper answer than what you're asking, but I think that's an important part of us asking ourselves, like, am I experiencing what's happening here because I keep not graduating from the lesson about something where I really need to grow, or I really need to heal from a wound from the past, or something where I'm still trying to prove somebody wrong who told me I would never measure up to something. And I mean, that can serve you until it doesn't. And I mean, they told me I couldn't be a fighter pilot. I truly believe that had I not been abused by my high school coach, I wouldn't have had inside me this courage to say, don't hold me down because I'm a girl. Don't hold me back. It actually, the awful thing actually turned into the fuel that propelled me on my purpose. But I needed to graduate from, like, the only purpose isn't like prove people wrong that girls can do this too. I had to graduate from that, right? So that I could continue on my journey of purpose in this world. So I don't know. All that is like a lesson for your listener. If you're feeling restless and hungry for something different, for something more, just getting a sense of like, all right, what's really going on here, and what's really going on inside me? And is there a pattern going on in my life that maybe I need to take a fresh look at? Oh, maybe it's like, stop blaming this and that and the other, and we just can't seem to find the right, employees, or the right, neighbors, or the right spouses, or whatever that is. Actually taking that hard look to kind of do the inner work to be like, all right, how do I get to a place where I am enough, and I am at peace, and I am aligned with who I am, and I am living in an abundant mindset, and I am going to attract those circumstances into my life, and I'm going to be that way. Not what I'm going to do, it's what I'm going to be. And then you actually find yourself in the circumstances where you're doing and having things that are aligned with what you're being. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love that we're talking about also the gifts that can come from these unwelcomed, or what we might perceive as a very negative experience. Yes. You're touching on, post-traumatic growth.
Yes.
And the lessons that we come, because it's all about the meaning. So as you said, you took a positive meaning from those experiences. You healed those wounded parts. So you didn't neglect them, and in doing so, you were able to triumph. You were able to gain more resources, maybe more self-confidence, more belief in yourself, more belief in what is possible for you. And that's really the gift of these adversities that we have in our life. And some people listening might be in a situation right now where they're not feeling fulfillment in some area of their life. Maybe they are really suffering, or maybe it's just very mild and they're in that little itch kind of place. Either way, it's really important to listen to that voice, and to both dare to fly in the sense of imagine, self-reflect, consider what might be your I ams, what might be that thing that, excites you, makes you feel happy, passionate.
Yeah.
And at the same time, to be able to accept where you are.
Yes. So with compassion on yourself and others.
Yeah, because there's a reason why you're there. And it's really important to not leave that place until we get the lesson.
Yes. Yes. And so let me just say, from my experience, the healing journey where you can truly see these adversities and these traumas in your life as happening for you, not to you. It was not linear for me. It's not like I healed myself and then I saw the clarity of it becoming a part of my purpose. I actually saw it as part of my purpose before I had actually healed. So these things are not, it's kind of, not linear how it all happened, but I wasn't going to, I would not have had the power inside me to say, don't tell me I can't fly that jet because I'm not a girl. Had I not lost my dad, had I not been abused by my coach, had I just had a continued stable middle class upbringing, or I just was, I never would have taken that route. And so it was turned into my purpose. I healed over time. I'm, probably still healing. I mean, who knows? We're peeling the onions back. You're always like, oh, there's another layer there. Or there's another reaction. So, but having compassion on yourself about where you are, and be looking at things that you've been through in your life as opportunities that really could have you grow and learn. It's painful. I mean, there's people who are listening who have been through, I'm sure you have been through, if you're listening to this, you've been through a lot more difficult and traumatic things than what I just experienced, what I just shared. And I am sorry that those things happened to you. And the best that you can do is heal and grow. And in the present, because all we have is the present. What I use aerodynamic terms. Drop the drag that's slowing you down and taking up fuel. So when you're flying an airplane, drag is an aerodynamic term of anything that's slowing you down and taking up fuel. Like if I'm flying with my gear down, it's, creating turbulence. And we have so many things that are drag in our lives, whether it's not forgiving ourselves or not forgiving somebody else who harmed us. And forgiveness does not mean you're letting them off the hook. Forgiveness does not mean that you're reconciling with them. Forgiveness isn't even about them. Forgiveness is about you. Forgiveness is about you releasing the poison that's inside you of unforgiveness that is stopping you from truly flourishing and living the life today that you have as an opportunity for today. And so that drag is something that's so critical, and it's not, it's not easy. Sometimes it can happen in a moment. Literally, forgive yourself, forgive others, drop the anger, drop the regret, because you literally can't do anything about it. And I remember this myself at one point going like, my perpetrator's not thinking about me right now. Why am I thinking about him? Why am I letting, he already ruined one day. Why am I letting him ruin this day? And so some of that is like a cognitive tool. Some of that is a decision, but you still need to heal the wounds. And there's different modalities out there to heal the wounds and make sure that those emotions truly get freed and they're not just stuck and suppressed in you, and get them out of you. And it doesn't take 50 years of, talking to people. There's ways, new, ways that you can do that, but be committed to drop the drag. Identify first, turning on the light, turn on a flashlight, look at what's going on in the dark, what might be festering there, what's truly holding you down, what is, still sitting there, in the dark. And the first step, which can be really scary, is turning that light on and then being committed to be like, I'm getting this stuff out of me because this is just not the life I want to live. And I don't want to be held back anymore.
And I'm so grateful to you for giving hope to people that are struggling now or are still healing or wanting to heal from past wounds. And as you said, there are many modalities, and I just want to kind of bring a couple of them for our listeners that we have talked about on this podcast, like emotional freedom techniques, EFT tapping. We have some episodes on that, and even guiding the audience, havening techniques, another psychosensory modality. We've had several episodes.
Nice.
We've also had Ho'oponopono, and we've had several episodes, including someone guiding the listeners through that to achieve forgiveness. Of course, many, many other modalities.
Nice.
There is something really key also in what you said in terms of like the fear. So if I have some kind of intuitive guidance, or even a very clear download of a calling, something that I want to pursue, and I am feeling that fear, another part of kind of softening that, the attachment or the over attachment to the fear, is considering that even if we do fail, that there will be that kind of post-traumatic growth kind of that.
Yes.
And so even if we quote unquote fail, what's the worst that can happen? Maybe
Yes.
some embarrassment. Maybe there is some temporary financial
Yeah.
downside, whatever that might be. There's still going to be a lesson, and that might be the very lesson that we need to get to take us to that next quantum leap. And so there is, again, it goes back to that faith, that belief
Yes.
that perhaps there is something guiding us here. That voice is coming from somewhere. And that voice is very loving and protective. And that means that we'll be okay.
Yeah.
And the only way to really know that that's true is to reflect back on our own life and say, okay, what are some of those things that at the time we
Mhm.
were very fearful of? And we were okay. We didn't die. We didn't,
Exactly.
we were okay. It wasn't true that thing, so, and of course, knowing, as you're saying, the research on habits and building more comfort with repetition and intention of
Yep.
something, just like tying our shoelaces or driving in your example,
Yep.
it'll get more comfortable with practice. We know that the brain is malleable, and we can absolutely train our body and mind to feel safe in new situations with
Exactly.
expanding the comfort zone just a little bit at a time.
Yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes our fear is that we will fail or that we'll embarrass ourselves. I mean, again, those are not attached to your higher self I ams that I'm pointing at over here in the background. That those are more attached to um people are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. And if they're haters on social media, then, they're not driving your life or whatever it is. I just, if we could free ourselves to truly live unapologetically as ourselves and follow our passions and knowing, it's like Thomas Edison said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just found 10,000 ways not to do it, And so it's all feedback. You're either winning or you're learning, and it's all feedback. Well, that didn't work. That's how not to do it. Now we've just eliminated one more way not to do it. But you've got to have kind of I think a deeper sense of your own value, and that your value is not attached to the outcome of a particular tactical thing that you're doing while you're on your journey. And that all takes the inner work to be like, hey, it may come at some investment cost, but I'd rather fail earlier than later, right? You'd rather fail fast if it's a monetary path you're taking, and just keep learning, keep growing. It's the only way. It's like doing reps at the gym. It's the only way you're going to be build a muscle. But you've got to. It's easier said than done, right? Not be attached to what people are thinking or how you're going to be viewed. That takes up just so much energy that is just drag on you being able to actually take off and soar.
Absolutely. I remember we had Marshall Goldsmith on the podcast
Oh,
talking about
nice.
a book called The Earned Life. And really, he did a lot of research on regret, especially talking to a lot
Mm,
of CEOs and senior, very, very successful individuals. And a lot of them had a lot of regret. They weren't
mm,
fulfilled. So they had a lot of stuff and a lot of,
yeah.
respect and acknowledgement from people. But on the inside, they didn't have that self-compassion, that self-acceptance, that self-love. So as you said, they were constantly like more. And
Mm.
and he said, the research around again regret is that at the end of life, whether it's 80 or on the
Yeah.
deathbed, as you
Yeah.
said,
Or tomorrow, we
you know,
really don't know. Today
exactly.
could be my last day.
Yeah, that the research shows that people regretted not what they did do, but what they didn't.
Didn't do.
And this is why, from all my heart, and I imagine yours, is really the invitation for people to do that inner work so they can dare to fly, and just trust that there is something
Yes.
working through them to support them.
Like every once in a while, we will get glimpses of the reality of maybe the dissatisfaction in our soul, or a reminder that life is short. We'll have a loved one who passes away, and we are at their funeral, and or someone who's even a colleague, or someone we didn't know so closely, and you sit there in that space. It feels really uncomfortable. We're faced with our own impermanence, and then we go back and turn the noise level up. And it's important to provide more space in those moments of thinking like, what am I doing? Like, This life is short. This body and this experience on earth is impermanent. One thing is for sure, none of us are getting out alive. So if you have another day or you have another 70 years, what did you come here to do? Be like, who are you? And you are here to express yourself uniquely as the person that only you can be. No one was made like you. And you're doing a disservice to humanity by not fully expressing what only you can bring to humanity and the impact that you can make and the growth that you will experience while you're here. So don't wait another day. Don't wait another day, just drop that drag and take off and soar because life is too short and the things that we think matter don't really matter. So align yourself to your true essence and start living boldly and daring to fly in all aspects of your life. You can do it. You're clear for takeoff.
That's right. That's right. So how can people learn even more, get more amazing Martha in their life? Because you've been such an inspiration to me. How can we access your stuff?
Thanks, Jared. My website is marthamcsally.com. So you can sign up for my email list, a newsletter where when I feel inspired, I send out inspired messages. I've also created I'm on social media. I'm at Martha McSally on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I've created a Youth 3.0 Facebook community. So we're building a more kind of intimate conversation and connection. I do actually periodic free coaching associated with that community. So you can tune in, you can sign up for that and tune in for the free coaching. And then, there's adventure retreats. I'm also keynote speaking to inspire as many people as possible. And all these lessons I've learned, some the hard way in life, to include other lessons as well, like how to be a courageous leader and, other things that I have unique experiences of leading men and women in combat. But yeah, if you want to, become a part of my tribe and follow me, then go to marthamcsally.com.
Thank you so much, Martha. You're such a blessing. And I'm just really grateful for our friendship and for all that you do. Thank you.
Baron, I'm honored. I've really enjoyed this conversation and connection, and you are such a gift.
Hi, Game Changers. It's Vered, and I just wanted to record this short follow-up message to just share how inspired I was by Martha McSally. I hope you feel the same. Her experiences are remarkable, things that she has overcome. And I love that she can see the positive in all of the adversities that she's faced because she's learned some lessons. And truly reminds me that nothing is impossible. Even when we're told it's not possible, those doors can open, and doors do seem to open when we commit. It's like all the universal forces join together to help us manifest what we want when we're truly committed and are willing to do the work. I also invite you to check out episode 162 with Jason Schechterly. It was about rising above adversity. Incredible human, amazing story. And I think you're going to love it. So all my love and all the best to you.